Welcome to Reinventing Capitalism, a space where tech, social entrepreneurship, and impact intersect. I'm your host, Claudia Thomas. Thank you to all the listeners that are with me every week, and a warm welcome to the new ones. This week, I speak with Eileen, a good friend that founded Made for a Woman, a company improving the well-being of women in Madagascar, the sixth poorest country in the world, through the production of raphia fashion items. Eileen is half Italian, half Madagascan, and when she was growing up, she witnessed firsthand the poverty and inequalities present in her home country. Since then, it's been her mission to bridge that gap. She founded Made for a Woman 5 years ago, and fast forward to now, she works with the biggest fashion brands out there, like LVMH, Chloe, or Fendi. Transparently sourcing the materials for their collaborations while employing 350 individuals from marginalized backgrounds. Her company has grown 10x per year in revenue in the past 2 years. In this conversation, we talk about the birth and growth of Made for a Woman, the impact that it's having in Madagascar, how they are bringing transparency and traceability to supply chains in the fashion industry, and what are their scaling plans so the model can be replicated in other marginalized communities. Join us to explore how Eileen is bridging the gap between social impact and financial returns in a very fashionable way. Hey Eileen, how are you?
Hey Claudia, I'm good, and you?
I'm really good. I'm so happy we're doing this. I don't get to interview a friend every week, so
Yes, I agree. I'm really happy to be here.
let's just start by telling the audience who you are, where you're from, a little bit about your upbringing, and I guess what you witnessed in Madagascar, because I think that's very special.
Okay, cool. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. This honestly really means a lot. I love the work that you do, and I really share your vision. So I'm Eileen Akbaraly, and so I'm half Italian, half Indian. But I grew up in Madagascar. Madagascar, considered, if you haven't been, is a beautiful country in terms of flora and fauna. 80% of the flora and fauna found in Madagascar is unique to the country, but it is also considered to be one of the poorest countries in the world. So I think growing up in such a poor country where you saw such a difference in terms of social status, as a child, it really shocked me, the injustices that I was surrounded in. And I just never really accepted it. My brain wouldn't comprehend it and wouldn't accept it, which I think, should be the case for everybody. I also grew up in a family where my mother has a foundation, and she's, being the first of 4 kids, she always brought me around in orphanages and hospitals. So I really grew up in an environment where I was always in direct connection with the people who, we were there to try and find solutions to problems regarding health or education. So I really grew up with that, and it's always been part of the purpose that I give to my life, which is how can I be more in service to others? So that's been my big question of life. And yeah, so I studied Madagascar until I was 18. And then obviously I went away where I studied elsewhere, where I studied business. I worked in India and Cambodia, always in textile and fat manufacturing. I studied fashion, I studied CSR. And then in 2019, I decided to go back to my country, and I started Made for a Woman.
So for the audience that is not familiar with CSR, that's corporate social responsibility, correct?
Sorry, yes, exactly.
So how does the idea of Made for a Woman come about? So definitely you have this background. What was the moment that sparked the idea of doing something about it?
Okay, so this is what I tell everybody. I've always known this is what I was gonna do since the age of 8. I remember even telling my dad, I want to put business and social together, and he was like, "What is that?" And so I remember when Tom's, brought this concept in fashion of you buy a pair and one goes to a child. He kind of revolutionized the concept of social entrepreneurship. And when I heard about it, and when the brand became a hit, I was like, "This is exactly it." So, I've always known this is what I wanted to do. I also, growing up in Madagascar, had my own association where I founded with a bunch of like a few friends, where it was really focused on children and healthcare. But I also, when I was a bit older, right before I went out to study in Europe, I created a small atelier in a village outside of the outskirts of the capital city, where the mayor of the town gave me a room. And I started working with 4 women who had lost their jobs due to a coup d'etat in Madagascar. And we started making clothes and uniforms for the children of the village. We started making clothes for the elders. And every Sunday we would get together and we would distribute this stuff. And it was such a beautiful moment, which I had never forgotten. I also believe that the Malagasy population is one of the most peaceful and kindest people I've ever met in my life. So it really touched my heart. And I just knew that, I had to do something for my country and for the people that has done so much for me. And also when I started Made for Women, I realized that Madagascar was actually a hub for fashion. So we have an insane craftsmanship and savoir-faire in the country. The country has worked with the biggest luxury brands for years. From like Louis Vuitton, Paco Rabanne, Celine, Dior, Chanel. We are extremely gifted, but nobody knows about us. And a lot of times, unfortunately, this is a problem when it comes to the fashion industry, is that we talk so much about the end product and the consumers and that aspect of the value chain, but we forget that there's so much more behind it.
Yeah.
And it's not only about Madagascar, but it's about all the developing countries and underdeveloped countries that are working for these textile manufacturing companies. And we tend to forget it. And I mean, why?
So before getting into what is Made for a Woman, you just mentioned something about the fashion industry, which is the traceability and like the power that they have in these minority communities. When you started Made for a Woman, did you know that you wanted to solve this problem of traceability and transparency, or that came a bit later, just as you were building the company?
So, I think I've been an entrepreneur for 5 years in an underdeveloped country working with some of the most important luxury brands. I realized that through the experience that I've created for myself and for my team and managing more than 350 individuals and a management team, I realized, through like crises and burnouts and, the evolution of it, that it all started with passion, right? But passion for wanting to do good in my case. This is where my company comes about. Having so much unconditional love for wanting to have someone feel that love as well. So this is where my passion comes. And of course, I've always loved fashion for the more psychological aspect of things. The fact that, even if we don't accept it, but fashion influences all of us. It's the way we communicate with each other. It's such an important part of who we are. And it's also one of the most important industries in the world. So the amount of people it employs is huge. So I always thought and always knew that there was so much beauty in this industry, but that unfortunately has been manipulated and used in the wrong ways. So it initially came from passion of creativity. So wanting to create with your hands something that makes you feel, when you feel something, it's just so different. It's our senses, right? So it makes you feel at 360 degrees and wanting to do it with other humans. And I have a deep respect for the people. I mean, they're my heroes and they're my inspiration, because I work with people, and obviously we're going to go more into detail, but I work with people who have very, very complicated backgrounds. But I have so much respect for these individuals because they don't focus on the problems, but either focus on the positive aspects of their lives. So all of the work that obviously the sustainability, traceability comes afterwards. I didn't even know that was even an opportunity for me, to be honest. It all comes from a place of passion, going towards the unknown, right? Just going for it, going with the flow.
You are a very passionate person. Like since I've met you, you are someone that everything you express is exactly how you feel it. And I can see how this has translated into the brand and into like your personal connections with everyone you've worked with.
Yeah.
So what is Made for a Woman? Let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah. So Made for a Woman, founded it in 2019. So the objective of Made for Owen has been, since day one, to improve the overall quality of life of people in my country through the art of weaving raphia, which is our natural fiber. So the concept of our project and the movement that we have created is really focused on a 360 holistic concept of what suppliers and brands should look like in fashion. Because not only do we employ more than 350 individuals, specifically individuals coming from very marginalized background, the country itself is already one of the poorest countries in the world, but we went even deeper. We have a convention with the Minister of the Population of Madagascar where they send us associations. So we work with associations with handicapped individuals, sex workers, single mothers, GBV survivors. And we welcome these individuals that have zero education, zero context in terms of professionalism, who really are there like that. Like, okay, they sent us here, now what? You know? So when we work with these individuals who already is all based on survival and fear, you have to create a relationship, right? Create a credible and trustworthy relationship. And this is where we come in. So we create financial stability, working towards living wages, right? And not minimum wages, because we all understand and know by now, I hope, that minimum wage is not possible to live with, especially in underdeveloped countries or developing countries. But we have created a whole social department today that follows each of these individuals. So we work with psychologists, we work with a medical team, we have assistant workers, we have a childcare area. And we're actually putting in place today our first mental health center, primary school, and shelter for all of the individuals that we work with. So they're all given a personalized and individual and group support, also in terms of, you know, professional formations, personal development, and more.
Okay. So let's start from the start. So let's say that you, like back then when you founded the company, how did you assemble this group of artisans, and which was the first product that you developed? And I guess if you want to explain how you started the company from there, right? Like, how do you sell those products? Like the first products that your artisans produced.
So it's so funny, like when you have to look back, you're like, okay, well, it just happened like that, right? So, I mean, I started with 6 artisans. With whom I still work with today and who have much higher positions in the company. I started with 600 artisans and I was just like, okay, well, raphia derives from a palm tree. Well, raphia has been used throughout centuries in Madagascar. It's part of the story of the history of our population. Let's go with that. So let's start making things, right? So I still have some of the first products, like we started making bags, we started making clothes. We would go into like old textile factories where they would sell like secondhand fabrics. I don't know. I'm a pretty creative person, so we'd put together ideas. Then I'm also from Milan. So my mom was like, why don't you go check out agents? I'm like, what are agents? What are showrooms? I had no idea. So I had, honestly, and for a while, I had no idea what showrooms were. And everyone's like talking about showrooms. I was like, okay. Well, then I started like meeting people and like talking to people, and they're like, okay, well, you can go check out this showroom. And I remember the one of the showrooms that I met, I started telling them my story, like who I was and what we do. And they were very intrigued by the story. So I think that did help a lot. The fact of my background and the project, and obviously, like you're saying, my passion, right? So they're like, okay, well, why don't we start participating in a fair? Let's sign a contract. You know, we get a percentage of the commissions and we can participate in the fair. This is how much the fair costs. Are you ready to do it? I was like, okay, let's do it. So initially I invested in my own company. That's how it initially happened. So initially I invested 20,000 euros. Okay. So I was like, okay, let's create some products. And so with the showroom, we started developing some ideas that we could present at the fair. And that's exactly what we did. And that's exactly how it started. I went to the fair. I did the fairs for 4 seasons. So 2 years with this showroom where I got feedback from clients, what worked, what doesn't work, what colors work, what people like, what people don't like. This is how we started making orders. Then I made an order first year of 100,000 euros. And that's how I invested into working. And then at the same time, in parallel, because I'm a pretty ambitious person, I want things to go on, you know? So from there, I was like, okay, well, people, you know, raphia has always been used as a summer product. And I've realized, and this is pre-COVID, I've realized that people believe psychologically they link raphia to a cheap summer product. We need to change that, right? That is not the concept that we want to keep going. So I started writing to a bunch of brands on Instagram, started DMing. I was like, oh, would you guys like to work with us? We're this project that does this. And actually, one company responded and was like, that's amazing because we want to launch our first summer product with bags. And that's where things happened. That's where
was this company?
So I'm not going to say it out loud for confidential reasons, unfortunately, but it's a brand that is specialized in espadrillas, and I work with them. I've been working with them for this long, and they gave us our first huge order. So huge order. I think we produced for them like 18,000 products.
Okay, so with this client, I assume that you are producing under their brand and their label.
Yes.
So Made for a Woman still wasn't a thing in itself.
So Made for a Woman was its own thing at the fairs. So we produced our own like product. So I Made for a Woman with the showroom, but in parallel to make more cash, I started writing to a bunch of different brands who were willing to either collaborate or even do white labeling. In this case, this brand preferred at the beginning to white label. And so at that point, I had two parallel businesses that had started developing.
Okay. Yeah. And which are some of the brands that you've worked with? Just like mention like how it evolved and how did you start growing and when did you see that was something that could actually become big?
Okay. So for 2 years, I was practically alone on this project where I was producing for Made for a Woman for the showroom. The orders were around 100,000 euros. So that means that we had around 1,000, 2,000 products to produce, which I would personally be the production manager. So I think that was the toughest period, but it was also the most important period because I worked with these artisans every day. I remember from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. every day for over 3 months. Every single day except for Sundays and some Saturdays, I would come to the atelier and I would do les tours de table. So table tours. And I got to know every single name. I knew every single problem, all the stories of the artisans while I was checking all the products. And let me tell you, that is what changed my company. Because today I can still tell you that I know all their names, all their stories, and therefore you don't create separation between the hierarchy. And I think that is the most beautiful part of what we have been able to create today. So for 2 years, this is exactly what I did. And on social media, I would post authentically, I think through passion and love for what I was doing, the women that I worked with, the products that we were producing, the products that we were creating were kind of different from what you would see in the market. So people actually liked them. And so 3rd year in, I get a message on LinkedIn on my birthday from someone from Chloé.
Wow.
Who's like,
nice birthday present.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the day and I was like, because actually so weird. And you know, like I'm a bit of a spiritual person, but 2 months prior, I'm like, I saw Gabriella Hearst was doing this co-branding with this social entrepreneurship in Ghana, if I'm not wrong, called Mifoku. And I'm like, this is what we need to do. I need to contact Chloé because I'm like, this is exactly the future of fashion. Like for me, Gabriella Hearst was like a visionary. She changed the concept of what fashion is and started integrating social aspects of it and made it cool. So I'm like, I need to contact them, you know? And I was like, I need to contact them. And then boom, I get this email. I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, this is where manifestation. Yeah, this is where manifestation happens. And so they're like, we would love to work with you, but are you certified? This and that. And so I'm like, I'm not certified, but we can do it. And so I started working on the certification for World Fair Trade Organization, which was something.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And at that point,
I was... Very slow moving.
Yeah.
Very slow moving, big organization.
And alone, you know, all of it, learning to do it alone. And then, thank God, my deputy director, who is still my deputy director today, Olga, entered the company. She came to Madagascar. She wanted to volunteer. She's from Colombia. She's like, I like what you do. Let's do it together. And so she's an engineer, and she was able to help me create a company that went from producing 2,000, 3,000 products with me to producing more than 30,000 products today in 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long do artisans take to produce, like, say, one piece?
So everything's made by hand, right? So, I mean, it depends on the complexity of a product. It can go from 2 days to, I mean, a piece for the house could take a month of work, you know? But on average, in accessories, a bag could go from 2 days to a week of actually hand making it.
Which products do you sell now? Like, what's the range of products that you offer?
Because we started being contacted by so many luxury brands to co-brand, which then I think we're going to go more into details. I had to, at one point, put Made for Women on the side a little bit. You know, I had to prioritize cash flow, and I had to prioritize continuity of project. And creating your own brand is a huge investment. So Made for Women today is going through a rebranding. Which will be launched in 2026, but we were focused on accessories, specifically bags and hats, and the rebranding will be a lifestyle brand. So everything.
Okay, amazing. Can't wait.
Yeah.
So which are some of these brands you've worked with? Because I particularly loved the collaboration with Fendi.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to explain how does a project like that look like?
Okay, so today, obviously, again, for confidentiality reasons, I can only tell you the ones that have already been published. But we do work with the biggest groups in fashion, LVMH, Kering, Richmond, etc. But today, officially, Chloe has been working with us for 3 years. Third year, working on a beautiful project together. They're also supporting us not only in production, so giving us work, but they're also supporting us, and this is something we can discuss later on, in the continuity and the traceability of our supply chain. So we work hand in hand with our sustainability team, who is a great support. And then Fendi, it is a beautiful project because we are still working with them. We worked on very important projects with Fendi, 2 projects last summer, so 24. One of them was called Hand in Hand, which is this project that Fendi does that puts in value craftsmanship and savoir-faire. So they have always concentrated on different regions of Italy, but for the first time, they actually did it outside of Italy. And Madagascar was selected as one of the countries represented by Made for a Woman to be part of this project. So we're one of the 4 countries that were selected. And this project was amazing because we reproduced their Fendi baguette with Malagasy, Madagascar craftsmanship, or our savoir-faire, with their leather and maroquinerie, so their leather accessories, in co-branding, Made for Women for Fendi. And these are museum pieces and can only be bought at a VIP level, made to order. So very, very particular project, very prestigious project.
I can tell.
Yeah. And it was the first time that Madagascar had ever been involved openly in such a project where it gave value to the people behind the scene. And the second project with Fendi, which was a commercial product, it was the first time that Fendi was producing raphia projects. Because they had always produced, but a lot of brands use viscose raphia, which is not raphia. So it was the first time that Fendi actually produced real raphia. And we worked on a project called the Roll Bags, which was made in 3 different sizes as a commercial piece. And I have a lot of respect for them because for the first time they wrote Made in Madagascar, made by Made for a Woman. And they did a whole communication with videos, press, communicating on the social aspects of what we do in Madagascar for their brand. And so this is revolutionary a little bit because it proves that brands are willing to start communicating on the suppliers that they work with. But that also depends on the credibility that the supplier is able to give the brand. And this is where things get interesting and where things change, you know?
Yeah, I was going to literally ask you about that. So you are becoming this source of transparency and traceability for these big fashion brands. How are you doing that? You know, like, what does that really mean?
How are we doing this? So,
Big question.
so I think I'm very humbled and grateful that these big brands, and I mean, I'm talking about many others as well, actually trust us and are willing to work with us to have a win-win situation. For the first time, they're willing to negotiate pricing. They're willing to negotiate production lead times. They're willing to negotiate to be able to fit a more social and environmental aspect to the work that they do, which is obviously a demand that consumers have, right? As conscious consumers. I do agree that at one point, of course, consumers are looking for it, but I also believe that is the responsibility of suppliers and brands to work together to create this interest for consumers, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't only start with production, it also ends with communication and marketing. Today, brands allocate huge budgets on marketing and communication regarding an end product. So the product and the celebrity or the influencer that is going to wear it. So they concentrate so much on an unattainable dream that the majority of the world can only dream about. You know? And this unfortunately creates a lot of lack. It creates a sense of, I am in lack of this. I do not look like that. I do not have that. And that unfortunately creates a lot of insecurities. But that's because we have been focusing so much on the end product. And because there has been no control and no relationship between luxury and supply chain. But if we can change the game, and if we can say, okay, we can concentrate on creating more credibility throughout the supply chain, throughout the value chain with our suppliers, can you imagine the storytelling and the narration that can be said throughout that compared to one little bit? We have a whole supply chain that can be communicated in the most interesting manners, but with real values. So then, girls of the age of 13 will not want to look like that supermodel that weighs 50 kilos, but will start associating themselves with the people behind the scene because now they're inspirational because luxury brands are able to communicate this in such a cool way that everyone wants that. So there you change the way society works as well. And so that is the objective.
Wow. I mean, like you're on for a challenge, but you're definitely slowly but surely doing something about it, which is what matters.
Absolutely.
And you are. So I assume you're sharing like all the information of how you source all your materials, how they are built by the artisans, and then you share that information with the brands, and that's what they use to communicate with the public.
So one thing that we missed out at the beginning when it comes to Made for a Woman, and I'm just going to quickly come in because I think it's important, is that we focus on the artisan, the social aspect, but let's not forget that there's also the whole environmental aspect, right? That everyone cares more today more than the social aspect. So the environmental aspect, when I started Made for a Woman, as CEO and founder, I had no idea what raphia was. I was like, okay, I've seen this product in my country for years, but where does it come from? What is it? So as a responsible individual who is about to storytell and sell a product, I need to understand what my product was, right? So with a freelance of National Geographic, I actually went to the only certified supplier of the country, and we did a whole documentary about it, which was the first documentary ever published and which you can easily find on YouTube, which is called the Raphia Journey, where we actually published this and we actually presented it during a event during the Festival de Cannes in 2021, where we won an award for the sustainability actions that we put in place. And this actually was very interesting for the brands that we were working with, because for the first time, there's still a huge ignorance according to this natural fiber. Brands don't know what it is. They don't know how to use it. They don't know how to manipulate it, but neither do companies in Madagascar that have been producing it for 20 years, because there has been no interest in understanding how it works. Now, because the world cares, actually everyone's getting involved. So we're actually putting in place, as we're speaking today, this project with Bondi, which is another social entrepreneurship in Madagascar based on conservation, and with the Minister of the Environment in Madagascar, we're putting in place one of the first traceable, transparent supply chain of the raphia plant in Madagascar. This will be able to be, followed up with blockchain AI, and we're actually working on this project with the brands from Richmond and LVMH who are also supporting us in putting this in place to create a complete vertically integrated company.
That is so interesting. And you're going to do it through both AI and blockchain, combining both technologies?
Yeah.
How? Do you have a glimpse of how you're going to build that?
So these are things that my team is already taking care of. It's obviously coming in as a second point. Please know that if a company in Madagascar has done it, they have not and do not want to communicate about it. We will communicate about it and we will be very open about it, because the idea is not to keep it for Made for a Woman, but to make it available to everybody. The idea is to source ethically, right? For a whole population. So we're actually in phase 1. And it's a project made in scratch. Like, no one's done it. No one's ever done it. So we're going with the flow. We're putting in place. We're doing analysis. We're working with consultants. We're going on field. It's exciting, but it's also like, no one's ever done it. So let's see where this comes up, you know? So yeah, but I think by 2026, we should definitely have a lot more. And at that point, we will definitely be integrating that whole aspect regarding AI and blockchain.
Okay. So just to close on this topic, I'm assuming that the AI and blockchain bit will be for brands to choose the suppliers, and the blockchain will be the technology that you guys use to prove where the suppliers are coming from.
Exactly, to be able to track the plant all the way to the end user through the certifications that we will be choosing to use for this.
Super cool. Congratulations on that project. I think that this can be a very good one and big one with a lot of potential of scalability.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if our listeners today want to purchase Made for a Woman products, where can they find you? Like, which are your distribution channels, both for Made for a Woman products, but also your collaborations with brands?
So today we have our B2C, which obviously will be rebranded as well, but you can definitely go and check out our madeforwomen.shop website, which you can find on Instagram or on Google. We are also working with a showroom in the US called High Alchemy, that we will soon be selling our products in department stores in the US, and which are very exciting because we're working with very big department stores very soon, information that's going to come out very soon. And I mean, you can purchase our Spring Summer 25 products with our brands, such as Chloe and Fendi, for instance, definitely in their stores and on their websites.
Okay, so for your own label products in Made for One website, and you'll also be in department stores and with partnerships in their own distribution channels.
Exactly.
Okay, super. That makes total sense. And going back to the artisans, you are now working with 350 artisans. Where do you guys source the product? So like the raffia that you use, is it sustainable? Is it secondhand? How do you choose your own suppliers?
So it was really hard to find a supplier that was certified in any way. I think I discovered it through YouTube or word of mouth. I don't remember. Anyways, we keep working with them. For the moment, anyways, they are BSCI certified, and they have a family business that's been doing raffia for centuries in the northwestern part of Madagascar. And I mean, we source through them. That means that they source as a company with their collectors, and then they do a triage, which is a selection of raffia in their company in the northwestern part of Madagascar. We make an order, and through, a truck, it is sent to the capital city where we work, where we do another check, and then we start working on that. We are also working with a third party regarding dyeing. So we work with GOTS and again, certified dyes, which will also be integrated in our atelier by 2026. We're going to be doing our own in-house dyeing. And then from there, this is how we start working raffia. Once whether you want raffia dyed or not, we send it to dye, and then we get it back and we start working on it.
Super. In 2023, you grew from 100K in revenue to 1.2 million. What drove this exponential growth?
So cash flow, thanks to, all the white labeling and all the co-branding that we're doing. And this is why I said that I put my company Made for Women on the side a little bit, because when you have to allow 350 people to work, and you have to make sure that you can give them the medicines, because we're talking about one of the poorest countries in the world. I mean, we offer services that the public sector should be offering them. We do it through our own company. So we have very, very high costs. So to be able to give continuity and work and well-being, I had to have work. I couldn't stop. Yeah. Right? We have a number that are fixed artisans throughout the year, but we also have people who get paid per product and who I don't want to keep doing that, you know? And even if we have 1 month of off season where maybe it's a low season, I always make sure that they can work with us. Either they do some cleaning or we do new projects for the atelier. So to be able to sustain all of that as a startup, I had to find work. And so thanks to that, that's how we started doing a lot of white labeling, a lot.
And how did you close 2024?
So 2024 was the toughest year for us because we went from working with middle brands, so bridge brands, affordable brands, to luxury brands. So to work with luxury brands, you have audits, you have to make investments, you have to grow your team, you have to be even more careful with quality. So, I mean, it was a huge investment for us, and it was a year of loss for us, but obviously it's part of the process. We went from producing for middle brands to luxury brands, so everything changes. But the new year, I am looking at it as if I know it's definitely going to be very different from 24. So I'm very happy about that.
Well, it seems like it changed, but because you reinvested all your capital into these brands. Yeah. So it was a growth reinvestment. It's not that the company wasn't doing well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't take dividends. I have a salary like everybody else. I also, part of my 2026 goals and so forth is to be able to change the company status of Made for a Woman into an employee-based company. I want my employees to have shares in the company and to have as much say as everybody else does. But this has rarely happened. Well, it's never happened in a fashion brand in a developing or underdeveloped country. So it would be a first-time thing. So I need to be able to create this in the most effective way possible.
Wow. It's going to shake so many known, I guess, things from the fashion brand already, because you're definitely doing things completely different to what we've seen until now. What's your role as a CEO?
So I think that's really interesting because, as CEO and founder at the beginning, you love what you do and you're part of the everyday, right? The day-to-day, the operational part. Then your company grows. I'm also Virgo, and I like to have control.
Like me.
Exactly. So we like to have some sort of control, and we're perfectionists, right? So, as the team was growing and everything, and I was trying to find my place because I know I still had to be in the operational, but maybe a little less. And where does my place stop? And when do I allow my team? Where do I make them feel like I trust them? And it was a process. Last year was an extremely hard year because I think I might have gone through a burnout. I'm not sure, but I think there was something going on. And that's where I remember I would be receiving messages from my team and I would feel sick, like actually sick. And I told myself, Eileen, if you keep doing this, you're actually gonna get sick. Why are you doing this to yourself? What's the point? And so I've always been a very philosophical kind of individual, and I've always tried to really understand introspection. And I think as a CNO founder, we have a huge responsibility to behave as leaders. But as leaders, you need to really understand who you are authentically. So you need to understand what comes from ego, what doesn't, what are your real objectives, why are you doing what you're doing. You need to really analyze yourself to be able to be grounded, to take decisions that are important and strategic, and to be able to have a team that can trust you and feel motivated by what you say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, it was a groundbreaking year because I realized that my role wasn't probably so much in the operational aspect of things. Obviously, I still intervene, but my role was more of an inspirational and motivational and strategic person. And so, as you were saying, a lot of the things that we're doing are kind of outside the box. And a lot of the clients that we work with have come to our atelier and are really touched by what we do. a lot of clients come and they cry when they come to our space. And I'm not saying this because it's our space, but we do a lot of things that comes from the heart and people feel it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think what we're doing, we're good at it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that, because as you grow, sometimes you can lose company culture and you can lose your sense of the foundation, of the reason of it existing. So my role as CEO and founder today is a lot more advocacy, right? A lot more commercial. I'm doing a lot of work, personal development work on myself through readings and courses and trying to really be like, I'm also very visionary and I know where I want to get and I will get there. But to be able to get there, I need to be in total like comfortableness with my essence and with things that happen. And when you have a company like this and you're a manufacturing company and you work in fashion where everything is fast paced, you need to adapt fast, you need to be flexible. It's a learning process. It's definitely better than any school I've been to. I hated school, so.
I can tell you that from the outside, the people that we know you are doing a great job, and we can see how you develop constantly and try to be the best version of yourself for you and for the people that you work with. So congratulations for that, because not everybody feels that they have the responsibility to be better versions of themselves constantly every hour of every day.
I think it's so important, and I've been very influenced and very admirative of this philosopher Krishnamurti, which maybe some of the listeners are familiar with. And he mentions the fact that the problem with our society is not society itself, the fact is that we don't know ourselves.
Yeah.
And so we're here to fix a society that doesn't even know who they are. And this is where all the work comes from. And I think if you're conscious enough and aware that the work comes from within, then a lot of things change.
I couldn't agree more. We're getting to the last bit of the interview. The last question would be, are you looking at raising further capital to scale? And how are you going to do that other than through the products and Made for a Woman itself? Meaning, are you thinking at replicating the model in other countries with other products? What are your visionary plans?
Okay. So the dream from the beginning was really to be able, and I remember very well, I even wrote it down somewhere, was to be able to replicate what we do in other places in the world, because it's a very easily replicable model that is not only replicable in the fashion industry but in every industry. So that's for sure, and I'm already in conversations for that. And yes, we are working towards scaling up. We are looking for funding through grants specifically, not so much equity for the moment. And I am in conversation with impact investing companies who are interested in investing in Africa, in empowerment, and so forth. So this is definitely part of our 2025 objectives.
Super. So last and closing question, you have this vision, of course, of scaling, of growing your company, of having more impact in different underserved communities. I want you to look into the future. I want you to imagine that you're looking into a crystal ball that shows you the future. And if you had to predict, what do you think will happen not only with Made for a Woman, but with the broader, let's say, fashion industry when it comes to this integrated verticalization of their services and impacting these underserved communities that you are impacting now?
So what I tell myself is that I use Made for a Woman as a business card to prove that it is possible. Okay, we're still in the process, but I know that it is possible. So my vision and where I want to get to, it doesn't even stop in fashion. It's not even sector oriented. It is human oriented. We're humans and we live in a world and we are social beings and we should be more collective. And unfortunately, we have gone through a period, which is part of evolution, where we were so much more interested in matter rather than creating more depth and connections with each other. Very money oriented, many individualistic oriented. And we've seen it. We've tried to make it work. It doesn't work. It is not who we are. I mean, statistically proven, the amount of people who are depressed, who feel, as if they're robots going from a 9-to-5 job. I mean, this is proof to show that we are so disconnected from who we actually are, from our authentic self. And so what I've noticed is that the reason why people are moved by what we do and why they're moved when they come to see us is because we're very authentic. We are very connected to the essence of what a human is. And so it reminds them of something that they are, but have forgotten. So the future in general needs to move towards this. We are empathetic beings. We're compassionate beings. We need to be more compassionate individuals working together for a greater purpose, and shouldn't just be so narrow focused, because there is so much more than just living in the box 9-to-5 job. And I think it's so important, whether it's fashion, but specifically education through school, that these teachings are taught to kids who will be ruling the future. And I believe that we are, as millennials, we are part of that teaching, and we should bring it forth in everything that we do. So this is where I'm going to leave it at. I think it's not just focused sustainability. It's not focused to any sector in particular, but it's a broader outlook of who we actually are, and really understanding the power that we have and that we have forgotten, and to remind that to people.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you so much for opening your heart to us in this space. I'm super excited to share this message with the audience, because I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of people, and hopefully with many, many more people than the one we can expect today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.